Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
Everyone, glad to see that the rain wasn't going to stop all of you. You're here and on time and actually looking great. No one came in waterlogged. Good morning. Whether you're joining us virtually from all over the world or in person here in Singapore, we are so excited to have you with us. I'm Janet Wu, an anchor and reporter based in Boston, where I interview the CEOs, the founders, the investors of that innovation hub that actually has a lot of similarities to Singapore. And I'm excited to host this presentation on intelligent automation, creating the workforce of the future. Advances in technology have permanently changed the way we think about work. And the pandemic added seismic shifts to how we are getting work done across all industries, from mass relocations to mass resignations to massive changes in work processes, including where work is getting done. The future of work looks very, very different from it did even just 3 years ago. Today, we are going to explore, in a short amount of time, some very important and relevant topics. The changing nature of work, how organizations are applying intelligent automation both to face labor shortages and also drive efficiency at the same time. We will also look at what kinds of work can be automated. For example, how can data skills benefit employees? How advances in automation can improve workforce operations and profitability, and what will be the jobs of the future? And also how automation can improve the work experience for employees. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. For our virtual attendees joining us today, if you experience any problems with your audio or video quality, try the old school thing first. Just refresh your browser. If that doesn't work, you can use the chat box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen to get support anytime. Everyone, whether you're in this room or joining us virtually, we would love to hear your thoughts throughout this program. Your thoughts and your questions. To submit questions virtually, please click open the white tab on the right side of the video window. And for those of you in the room, you can submit questions by simply scanning that QR code on your badge or on the card at the center of your table. That QR code will not pop up a food menu. It's actually how you can submit questions to us in this age of new normal. You can also engage with us on social media by using the hashtag #IntelligentAutomation. I would like to acknowledge our sponsor, IBM, for making this conversation possible and hosting this beautiful breakfast in this elegant room. And with that, I invite Dinesh Nirmal, General Manager, IBM Data, AI, and Automation, to the stage to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Janet. Really appreciate you giving the opening remarks. And first of all, thank you to all of you for coming. I know the weather is not cooperating, but I really appreciate all of you being here. And I really look forward to an engaged and lively discussion on intelligent automation. As you can see, I came up with this. I said, look, if you think about it, everything in life is a workflow. From the time you wake up, go get a cup of coffee, go drop off the kids, go to work, come back. If that premise holds that everything in life is a workflow, life can be automated. Let me give you a very simple example. In the 60s and 70s, we used to wash dishes by hand, keep it to dry. But if you look at the 90s and 2000s, The dishwasher automated that process completely. What did that accomplish, right? That accomplished optimization, productivity, but more importantly, time to go focus on high-value tasks. High-value tasks could be for parents. I mean, it could be spending more time with the kids, reading books, or watching reality shows in TV, whatever it could be. But it really helps you go focus on high-value tasks. And that's what enterprises are looking for. They're looking for more productivity. How do they get optimization? How can they get employees to go focus on high-value tasks like innovation? Let me give you a couple of examples, right? What enterprises are driving with intelligent automation. There's a huge benefit beyond these three things I talked about, which is a happy customer. That's what intelligent automation and digitization brings. We are working with McDonald's, for example. Completely automate the drive-through order taking. You drive up to a kiosk, you place the order, a voice recognition system takes it, completely automates it, pushes it to the friend. Me as a customer, shorter queues, I can get my order done fast, happy customer. We are working with airlines, completely automate, no paper trail, no human interaction. You swipe your phone, you walk through check-in process. We are working with pharmacies, where complete end-to-end we are automating, how do we process the prescriptions. Last but not least, large insurance companies, where, think about it, if you had an accident, the time it took for you to go through the process of filing a claim, getting your car fixed, but today, we can just take a picture of the accident or the car, upload it, quickly get a quote, send it to the body shop. What used to take days, weeks, months can be done in hours. Happy customer. That's what intelligent automation brings. It brings not only optimization, productivity, but it creates happy customers. And that's what every enterprise is striving towards. That's the most important thing. I'll also say this. I think the next decade is all going to be about automation. Every enterprise, I see it in and out. Every customer I talk to, it's all about automation. And this is my fourth trip, between AP, Europe, and other parts of the world. Every customer talks about intelligent automation. I think the next decade is going to be all about intelligent automation because look what's happening, right? Skills gap, mass resignation, problems with supply chain, geopolitical issues. That's all driving customers, enterprises to automate. That's the only way an enterprise can survive and succeed for the next decade. I truly believe it. So in closing remark, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a partner. And with that, let me turn it over to Janet for further. Thank you.
Dinesh, thank you. We are going to be very efficient with your time this morning, so we are going to dive in. Companies across all sectors are leveraging the latest advancements in automation and AI to create seamless workflows between job functions and their different lines of business. We are lucky to be joined today by two leaders to hear how they are leveraging these technologies to transform their operations, break down silos, and optimize efficiency. I'm going to turn the stage over soon to my colleague, Michelle Jamrisco, Senior Asia Economy Reporter for Bloomberg, luckily based right here in Singapore. And she will be speaking with Sham Arora, Global Head of Enterprise Technology at Standard Chartered Bank, Rajat Mittal, Managing Director, Digital and Technology at Mercatus Cooperative Limited.
Morning. And Dinesh, thank you for those comments. I'm trying to decide how spooky that made me feel, how spooked out about automation it is. And That's one thing that we'll get to, but we only have 25 minutes, and we do want to focus on that breaking down silos that Janet talked about, really how to accelerate your business efficiently through this automation. And there's so many tangents we could explore there, but I'll try to keep us on track. I mean, I think to start, I want to ask each of you, Rajat and Sham, what is an example of a tool you've deployed recently that has really accelerated that efficiency, that has checked that box in automation and really taken you to a new level?
Well, let me start with saying at Standard Chartered, we are in a business of creating trust. We are there to serve our clients. We're there to solve their problems. We're there to be there for our clients in the context of their problems or in the context of the time when they need us. So the main thing, if you look at where banking is going and regulations are going, the client demands are growing, the regulations are growing even faster, and what it really comes down to is how do you continue to service your clients in a predictable manner, provide safe and secure services which they are able to enjoy all the time. And I would say there is nothing in the world you can do today without automation. So I'm gonna perhaps give a personal example, just to make the case. So when I joined Standard Chartered in 2003, the first global payment system was built by our team. And at that time, we were processing about 1 million payments a month. And actually, the system was capable of processing 1 million transactions a month. And I actually remember we had a great celebration when we actually hit the milestone of, hey, we got 1 million payments a month. Today, the re-architecture of our payment system, we do close to 2,000, 2,500 TPS for an instance of payment system. Now, that, to me, the explosion of what's happened in the payment space, not just for us, but across the world, is a significant use case. And to Dinesh's point, today in the world, there's nothing you can achieve without automation. But then you also need to automate not just the processing, you need to automate your controls, you need to automate your risk management, you need to automate the safety and security for your clients. In all of these aspects, be it cyber defense, be it controls, be it risk management, we use automation in all of those aspects. So I would say, I would agree with Dinesh completely that you couldn't run any medium or large enterprise today without automation.
And in recent years, did you see any additional tools, like within, for instance, global payments you're talking about? That's a big issue in this region.
No, absolutely. So I would say, first of all, the various governments realize that making efficiency in payments creates efficient economies because the settlements happen faster, the money travels faster, people have less to borrow, they can do more with their money, right? So it's basically helping the SMEs and businesses. And hence, they started creating several new clearing schemes. Now, we in Standard Chartered, just for our footprint, we cover close to 200 payment schemes across a footprint. And so basically, that means almost every payment scheme, be it instant payments and be it RTGS and ACH, et cetera. But having said that, what's really happened recently is you have bots. For instance, we have bots to keep our payment services running and monitor them all the time. And if there's something going wrong, the bots auto-correct the system state. We even have the fraud prevention mostly automated. But we do look at exceptions. So we have humans to look at exceptions in the cases we need to look at exceptions. And that happens all the time. Right from preventing poor requests from coming in or velocity of requests from coming in, which could be a fraudulent DDoS attack, for instance, to the way you actually keep your clients secure and look at the beneficiary client combinations, look at the velocity of payments, look at every aspect of fraud prevention. There's automation in every aspect. And I have to say, because technology and cyber defense has caught up over time, right? There's always a race between the good guys and the bad guys.
Right.
And the more technology advances and the more the speed of the computer advances, that advances for both good and bad guys. And they are able to use then the higher compute to go after anybody, which then requires the good guys to continue to keep pace. So most banks, I would say, and certainly ours, we believe in something called defense in depth, again, which is what we've been strengthening and building over time.
So you have some well-behaved bots, but you still have the humans in place to kind of help oversee. Okay, so Rajat, tell us about a tool that you've deployed.
So again, very different contexts. So just to give some background on who we are. So we are a commercial real estate company. We own and operate commercial real estate assets, shopping malls, offices in Singapore, right? So as an industry, commercial real estate has been a technology laggard. So our digitization automation journey is all of 4 years old. If you look at the problem statement, I have 155 million people who walk into my portfolio on an annual basis. Most of these people walk in, consume products and services that we have to offer, but are not digitally connected. So there's no way for me to reach out to them, to engage them. So really the issue for us was, how do I create agility in my front line, in my digital channels, so we can innovate faster, we can have faster time to value, and also manage costs and risks associated with it. So early on, we made a decision, given our size and scale, we're going to go low code. So low code development platforms was a way for us to significantly reduce our frontline system development costs and also drive a culture of experimentation. So we're able to reduce our total effort and time to value by as much as 60%. Again, focusing primarily on digital channels which connect to customers and front office capabilities that we know would take some time to harden. So that was sort of the first piece of it. The second piece, which we had early on KPI, was going paperless. So I know it sounds simple, but as you start to unpeel the onion and start double-clicking and triple-clicking on what it takes to make a process paperless, you unearth new ways of automating things that have never been thought to be automated. So that drove, obviously, process automation, the RPA solutions that you have as a key driver. Just to give a sense, when we started, our paperless percentage of all our enterprise processes in the mid-teens. Today, we're at about 80%.
Wow.
So I think we've come a long way. But again, I think paperless and operational efficiencies, there are a few ways to think about it in our case. One was obviously automating repetitive tasks, automating things where paper is moving from one desk to another or one department to another. But I think a bigger one was also about how do I create the string of pearls approach, where I have smaller best-of-breed systems, not necessarily from one sort of mega ERP vendor, but they're still able to connect to each other and talk to each other. So a lot of the RPA use cases that we have is also on the technology side, where seamless system interconnectivity and consistent sort of enterprise data fabric, where all of that data is stored and available for teams to use. And I think the last piece for us was, again, something which I think a lot of people have not done in this industry, is creation of enterprise data lake. We had this view of running the business where a lot of mid-sized businesses operate this way, where you have these annual monthly or quarterly operations reviews, and a lot of the insights are post facto. So really bringing all our organizational data into one view, have alerts and notifications for people to take corrective action in near real time, as in when those things happen. So significant drop in traffic or significant drop in sales of a particular segment of customers that we serve, what are the initiatives or interventions that the business teams can take as and when that happens. So I guess I would sort of say those are the few tools and capabilities that worked for us.
So 80% paperless, I'm just thinking that you have a few more file cabinets to get rid of before you...
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think we'll get 100%, but
Right.
I think if you can reach the 90-95%, that's success.
Right. Okay, well, let's address, I mean, we could spend a whole day on data privacy, but maybe let's address one other concern that a lot of clients, and I'd be interested to hear what your clients are thinking, but usually you hear that there's a concern around being impersonal. Once you start automating so many processes, you don't have that personality, the human connection. Where do we stand on this? I mean, do you still hear that complaint from your clients, from people you speak with, even fellow business leaders that are looking at these sorts of things, and where are we headed?
So, I mean, in our case, it was a real chasm because, again, as I said, it's a traditional industry, not so I think there was a bit of education that was needed at the start. The chasm took us about 18 months to cross, where you sort of seed some early examples, show some early successes, and of course, communication is key, right, to bring people together. So you have to have cross-departmental, in many cases, CEO down communication, that automation is not at the peril of jobs or people being made redundant. But you have to sort of put your money where your mouth is, right? You have to show incentives and rewards on the back of early successes that you're able to achieve. And then what really worked for us was none of our automation KPIs are IT KPIs. So most of those are co-owned 50-50, if not more, leaning towards the business owner, the CFO, the CHRO, the COO, as much as it's owned by the IT departments. So in that sense, it's not sort of us pushing a certain KPI of creating processes paperless, but really the departments themselves owning and driving that agenda.
So more the face of the business.
Yes, and to be honest with you, it's very hard for someone from outside to come in and improve a process. I mean, the functional teams sort of know where the process inefficiencies are, and they are the best place to actually point them out and automate it and do a good job at it. Of course, the challenge with that also, so that's the second piece. The third piece of it is citizen developers, where we actually trained up quite a few of our cross-department frontline staff to be the ambassadors for automation. We have about 20 in one of the portfolio companies that I look at, and most of these are evangelists for driving change within their departments. Of course, the challenge is that these are very hard people to hold on to because they get trained, they show value, and then usually the organization has not created a career path for them to sort of stay in because they become hot commodities in the job market. So we have been very actively pursuing a way in which they can actually transition into tech teams if they want, or take on bigger roles organization-wide, not just focused on their department.
There's certainly a lot of complex talent issues and challenges, right, these
Absolutely.
days. Sham, what do you think? How scared are your clients still?
So first of all, I think you spoke about 2 points. One is the data and the privacy issues. So I think perhaps most institutions, if they don't already, they need to make sure that, I think Rajat spoke about data lakes. So banks have been using data lakes, and I think we've been using data lake for the last 15 years. We do a lot of things with our data lakes, including our risk algorithms and various calculations. But one of the things we need to absolutely be sure of is that when we use data for creating any sort of AI, that it has to be responsible AI. Because as I said right at the very start, I think banking and Standard Chartered Bank certainly thinks that we are in the trust business. And if our clients can't trust us, then obviously with their data, then obviously we're not doing our business right. So absolutely, responsible AI has to be pivotal to however you offer any service. So that was point one. I think your point two was what happens to the workforce as more and more automation happens. What happens to the workforce? For that, I would actually like to go back to my payments example. So if you look at payments and look at maybe 10, 15 years ago, cost of doing checks transactions used to be close to $3. Cost of doing ACH was maybe 27 cents. Today, if you look at the instant payments, wallet payments, they cost you sub 0 cents. I mean, it's like there's hardly any cost for that. It's completely automated. There's only cost for managing exceptions and fraud prevention and cyber threats and those risks. So the significant cost is primarily just on the technology and keeping the rails running. Now, what that has done, however, is somebody may say, oh, actually, does that mean that there's no people doing payments anymore because it's all 100% automated? Actually, what happens is the laws of economics do not hold too well when you get to service becoming convenient and also such low priced. What you normally see is that the number of use cases for which you needed payments actually goes up exponentially just as payments become more convenient, and payments are now available almost everywhere. And due to that explosion to some extent of use cases, that demands very high demand for that service, which then requires many more people sometimes to work on those services. So for instance, we have huge teams on fraud control, we have huge teams on cyber risk management, we have huge teams on just making the client journeys more convenient and ensuring that the clients get the convenience that they expect from our services. The one thing I'd add is that it still does not mean that everybody and their previous jobs are going to continue to be there in the new world. So at the bank, we kind of recognize this early. So we actually have a formal academy where we continue to train and cross-train people. So I think Rajat spoke about the fact that sometimes people get enriched with their knowledge and they leave. What we found is that they're getting so much knowledge, and they're getting so much richness, and they're getting so much opportunities to move around, that for the real knowledge-hungry workers, they actually want to stick with us. There are obviously people who, there's going to be some attrition, and there's going to be some people who are always going to be, moving and jumping jobs for a certain percentage of amounts. And we are happy to lose those people, and they come back to us sometimes by learning and having more perspectives. So, but we have learning culture as a constant way of living at the bank. And we realize that learning is not an event. It's not when you're outskilled that you need to go for learning. You're learning almost every day. So we have hundreds of people going for classroom training and digital trainings on a daily basis.
So you're making a strong case against those who think, automation means job destroying. Instead, your case is that it actually could create exponential job growth.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, for instance, if you read the World Economic Forum report, actually they did some analysis and they said in 22 to 25, so basically these 3 years, the current year and the 2 years to come, the technology will create 12 million more jobs than it would displace. So actually, I mean, there's data, and I'm sure there's some research that went behind it.
Right.
But we've seen that. We've seen that in every aspect of what you are. So whether it's digital channels, which we think should be replacing manual transactions, and hence you would have less people supporting a business. Actually, you have more people supporting a business, because now there are many more journeys. There's APIs, there's many channels. There's many more clients that you're serving. There's many more platforms that you're serving. So I've always seen that as technology becomes more convenient and more available, and to some extent even lower cost and more automated, because automation creates convenience. That really creates many more use cases, and hence you require more people to support that business. Sometimes on the other side, but you do need a lot more people to support that business.
Okay, well, let's bring the audience in here, and I would encourage audience members with questions to use Pigeonhole to submit. There is one about a different threat, about cybersecurity, which we've mentioned a couple times. The question is, where is the line between intelligent automation and privacy and ethics? Oh, excuse me, I'm reading the wrong one, but this one's good too. And privacy and ethics of customers resulting from automation. So a little bit in the privacy realm.
So, I mean, the customers definitely would like us to keep their transactions safe, and customers would like us to keep them safe. Now, as long as we're using our analytics and fraud prevention for analyzing our clients' information to really be doing that, I mean, that's responsible AI. That's really responsible fraud prevention. If you start to do that, to really start studying anything beyond for our clients, then I guess it's going a little bit beyond. And that does not mean that the banks do not use some of the data sometimes, or the other companies, especially platforms, are quite famous for it. They would use data to be able to market other services. But again, that goes with explicit agreements with the clients around what the data is going to be used for. And that's what responsible AI is all about. I mean, it's about creating that convenience ultimately for the client, and ensuring that the client enjoys that convenience. But I mean, some people argue that platforms have taken that argument way too far, and that's why there's Web 3.0 coming up. There's going to be people picking and choosing what browsers they use, who should use the data, and for what purposes. So obviously, there's huge amount of evolution happening even in that space.
I mean, I think on the enterprise side, for us, the argument is very clear, right? I mean, PDPA lays out what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. So I think as long as, and it's a constantly evolving body of regulation as well. So I think that's relatively straightforward as long as you follow it and do what you do based on explicit consent from the customer to use their data in a specific way, in a specific use case. Then I think you're in safe territory. But of course, as Sham mentioned, you talk about platforms where people can link your user behavior in one set of vertical to something completely different. So linking your alcohol purchase history to price insurance products, for example, of course, becomes completely unacceptable. But I think regulation still has a lot of catching up to do.
Right.
I think tech is changing faster than regulators can keep up. And of course, when you inject the issue of ethics, I think then it's not law, it's about what the company believes is the right thing to do. And I think that's where draw a line in the sand that this is acceptable and this is not.
So we're still in a place where the businesses are kind of taking the lead ad hoc to their specific clientele then, is that the case?
Yeah.
So let me go back to the cyber question. Oh, it's it's off my screen, but let's go with this. Intelligent automation platforms are sometimes seen as Mickey Mouse software. as compared to automation within the core stack? What is your view?
I think it was perhaps not then a cyber question, because if it's being compared to Mickey Mouse software, so a lot of people, there's a lot of criticism of RPAs, for instance. I think Rajat mentioned that. Yeah. So every company has deployed some RPAs and some bots to do something, and that's not really for prevention of cybercrime. I mean, for prevention of DDoS attacks and for prevention of multiple different aspects of how the bad guys, let's say, can get into the bank. There's so many different tools that we apply and employ, which is complete defense in depth, as I said, right from the internet and how the requests can come in, where they can come in, how they can land, how we detect, what genuine requests can actually land at the bank perimeter and the remaining don't even come to the bank, and all the way then how they're taken in and how they process. So there's a massive defense in depth, and that's not really bots or the mini automation. But the bots, I would say, are useful tools for, let's say, where you have a small amount of work with small amount of workforce, which you cannot prioritize to automate properly, and sometimes the economic returns don't justify. Sometimes it's just something that you can do much more quickly than enhancing systems. But again, I think one has to be really careful about the proliferation of bots, because if you change systems, if you change your UX, your user screens, some of the bots may have to be done or retrofitted to the new screens and to the new experience. So yes, you would sometimes use bots, but not for large enterprise scale operations, especially in the changing spaces.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more, right? I mean, I think I told you it took us about 18 months to cross that chasm where there was widespread company-wide acceptance and adoption of RPA. I think in many cases you go too far on the other side. So you use process automation as a silver bullet for things that it's not ideally suited for, and you have either severely high maintenance costs or suboptimal outcomes where systems just don't work together as they're expected to. So I think we are trying to balance that a bit. Of course, I think the other challenge with bots is that a lot of people who are new to automation will try to automate a process as is. And again, in our experience, process needs to be simplified, re-engineered before it can be automated. So a badly designed process, when automated, is a badly designed system. So I think those are some learnings that we have seen, and I agree. The bot is not sort of a panacea for all your productivity issues. It needs to be used selectively for very specific use cases. I see a lot of companies tracking mean time to button. So it takes us 4 hours to create a button for these set of activities. And I mean, again, I think for some of the more sort of reporting-oriented use cases, that might be a good metric to track. But for the more substantive use cases, an RPA or a bot solution is just one of the multiple options that we need to look at.
Okay. Well, so I've asked you a lot about the threats and the challenges here, but I want to kind of get to the opportunities. So one concern, I think, coming out of the COVID era, especially with everybody working from home, or most services people working from home, was that we would grow too impersonal and we wouldn't get that office feel, we wouldn't get that camaraderie, we wouldn't get that same type of communication that we have when we're all around each other. I imagine automation sometimes faces that similar criticism, but I'm wondering, have you seen ways in which the tools that you've used, the automation processes that you've deployed, have actually elevated that sort of communication and brought people together in a different way? I mean, what case would you make for building kind of social interaction through these tools?
Absolutely. So I think, first of all, everyone has their COVID stories and how they dealt with the pandemic, and we have our own. And I was actually at the center of it. We had to expand our VPN connections from 7,000 to 70,000 in a matter of days for us to be able to remote work at that scale, which we'd never done before. It was unheard of. It was unthinkable. But having said the enablement part, I would say we were to some extent lucky. We had adopted our agile ways of working way before COVID started. We actually had a stand-up culture. For COVID, during COVID, as the collaboration tools were rolled out, again, quite quickly, we used to have the same video conference rooms. Sometimes, and very few lucky users had video conferencing on their laptops, but video conferencing being a prevalent utility on the laptops or computers was unheard of. But having deployed that fairly quickly as well, we were able to do our stand-ups remotely and Kanban boards and Trello boards. So we were having a daily stand-up. We were having a daily connect with the teams, at least the Scrum Masters were. We also had a culture of hackathons. And again, this is pre-COVID. So we used to put operations and technology people and some of my guys in terms of the data lake and APIs as a part of enterprise tech. I run all of those aspects together to say, solve your problems, right? And it would be very simple because they would know each other. They would be friends. They know that how much of pain it is causing. So to Rajat's point, sometimes RPA solutions, sometimes even automation of a proper validation on the system side. You could just do that in a matter of a release being done over a weekend, which would otherwise have to wait for a backlog and prioritization and all kinds of things. So we had this culture of hackathons, and that allowed people to know each other. But third thing, I would say it's one of the biggest enablers, which I remember we did. Some of the markets we work in, we had overnight lockdowns. And when that happened, and I was responsible for one of our biggest workforce at that time, which was the entire offshore locations, about 35,000 people. Biggest worry I had is I hope everybody's okay. I hope everybody's fine. I hope they are able to work if they want to work. And overnight, we deployed an app platform overnight, which was single sign-on with their bank ID password, and people could just log in and answer very simple questions. How are you doing? Right? Do you need something? Are you able to work? And that was so popular. I mean, our NPS scores that year, I remember, skyrocketed. I think several companies who worked well with their workforce skyrocketed their NPS scores. But for us, it was more about keeping a connect with our people. So to your point about how would you use technology enablement despite COVID and COVID-like event, I think it was a massive enabler, massive enabler.
And people are brought more together even after the fact. So.
Absolutely.
Rajat, what was your experience?
So again, very different cultural context. So we've had 100% work in office environment before COVID struck. So culturally, it took people some time to sort of go away, work from home, still collaborate. I think there was about a 6-month period where people were sort of norming and forming ways of working. But I think everyone caught on. But I think now that everyone is back on, so if I look at the road ahead, people want flexibility, which I think most of us are completely open to, and we offer them that flexibility. But they also want agility in the way they come together. So our view is that the future of office would be a bit like a hub and spoke model, where you have headquarters, but you also have smaller offices around your operations, and project teams can come together in those individual offices as and when they need it. So one of the things that we are looking at, it's not yet rolled out, is if you can create a simple booking system, right, for project teams to sort of book space in a particular part of the country where they can sort of come together and spend a day brainstorming. Instead of all coming into CBD and sort of 2 days a week, and you don't know whether everyone you need is going to show up or not. So I think that's one thing to look at. I think the other thing is, as automation became more prevalent, we had a lot more time where people are looking at process re-engineering and looking at ways in which they can improve their interdepartmental collaboration. So I think because mostly our frontline teams are so busy running transactions or running operations that they've never had the time to step back and take stock on how to improve things. So we see a lot of that happening with some of the manual tasks being sort of handed over to a bot or a system.
Okay. And there's a question that came in for Sham specifically. In Standard Chartered, have you driven and adopted RPA as tactical or strategic investment, and why?
Our RPAs are mostly only for smaller use cases, as I said, right? So if they were large industrial size use cases, sometimes we would use an RPA to start with. So I remember one of the aspects where we have this correspondent bank charges that we collect for every payment, and it used to be a big problem to be able to reconcile every charge coming in versus the charge that was supposed to be due, et cetera. And the initial automation that was done on that was very quick and easy with the RPAs looking at the payments data from the data lake, looking at the charges coming in, going out, et cetera, and being able to reconcile. But so there have been some which were, I would say, solving big problems very quickly. But then if it was for efficiency, I think as Rajat said earlier, sometimes if your process is expecting just a few clicks, perhaps it's the wrong process, right? Sometimes if your process is expecting information to be brought in from 3 different systems and entered on a screen and then doing clicks, perhaps you should be using APIs, right? So I just think from a longer term basis, Standard Chartered's focus has been on building more sustained technology, more scalable technology, because we are in a convenience and also a scale business. We see that the financial services, as I said earlier, if a service is convenient, it's going to scale. And if it scales, you can't use RPAs at scale.
That's a good case for automation, but not just for automation's sake, just thoughtful.
You do automation, but with the right solution. I mean,
Yes,
using an
tight.
API is also a way of
Sure.
automation, but you would just use it in the right way. Because, as you know, that the RPAs are sometimes very quickly deployed solutions to really do labor arbitrage to some extent. But sometimes you do it too much, and sometimes those people were actually adding value, and you actually skip some validation. So you have to think it through, what capabilities you're building, and actually was a human required or not. And if human's not required, then you do it properly, especially for scalable systems.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing I'll add to that is governance and controls for your key crown jewel systems at the back becomes quite nightmarish if you have multiple people trying to do multiple things through low code, front ends.
Right.
And I guess that needs to be controlled and managed, with a lot of seriousness.
Right. Well, we only have a few minutes left, but I want to kind of throw it forward for the last question, a 2-part question. Keeping true to our balance here of the challenges and the opportunities, I want you to think ahead 1-2 decades. What is the thing that you most fear about what automation could do and keeps you awake at night now? Is the Black Mirror scenario. And then alternatively, what are you most hopeful about what automation will do to improve lives?
So maybe the first thing is, I think that to some extent the banks prepare for most contingency situations, and there are several. And you plan sometimes for extreme scenarios, you plan for various aspects of how the industry, systems, technology, operations can be, and we look at the operational resilience in every aspect, because this focus of the bank is that we stay safe and our clients are always served. But having said that, I mean, COVID was not a predictable event. And I think one of the biggest things we think we should rely on is that people need to know each other. People need to know when there's an unexpected thing happening, who to go for what kind of a question. So to some extent, a culture of collaboration and a culture of constant learning and sometimes being able to lean on. I think we were speaking about gig work prior to the session. You can't convert the entire bank to a gig work. You need to have people who are multi-talented, who know each other, who know various things, for us to be able to deal with the unknowns. So I think that's something which industry needs to know and realize, and we are heavily pivoted towards that. In terms of your second question, if I may quickly answer that, I think we are at the moment in our 4th industrial revolution. I think Dinesh spoke about several things that are going on in terms of easier compute, data analytics, human-machine interaction, intelligent automation, engineering, etc. I think the next couple of decades are about convergence of these technologies more and more, and also creating a client experience which is much more convenient, much more trustworthy, much more transparently trustworthy. And I think to some extent the companies that are focused on perhaps 3 things: client experience, trust, and convenience, building sustainable technologies and looking at and working towards the sustainability of the society, as well as having the client's trust and resilience over time, I think those companies will stay longer. And the companies who are not focused on these things will perhaps have to pivot to these things or may have to really rethink their business models.
Survival of the fittest there, yeah. Rajat, tell us about the good and the bad.
I mean, I think keeping client trust, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I think more and more customers will trust their data with companies they trust. And you have to earn that trust by demonstrating and creating actions and interactions which doesn't breach that. And of course, the worry with that is that as you democratize data and you democratize access and you make things more self-serve, how do you ensure that everything is used to the right level by everyone in the organization? So create a culture of trust within the organization, ensuring governance and compliance, and ensuring that that gets exuded out to all our touch points, all our interaction with customers as well. From opportunity perspective, I mean, my big hope is ESG. I mean, I really think that automation, while ESG has been something that most companies have charted on, typically it's very hard to track your carbon footprint, to track how you're doing environmentally, and is there a roadmap for you to be carbon neutral. If automation can help mid to large size companies with that, I think it'll be a silver bullet.
I think a lot of people would be grateful. Well, thank you both. We're at the end of our time, but I appreciate the audience questions as well, and hope we can continue this conversation. A lot to talk about.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Dinesh Nirmal, General Manager of IBM Data, AI, and Automation.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Rajat. And thank you, Sham. I mean, I get the privilege of asking questions, which is good for a change. So I'll ask you the tough ones. But let me ask you this. How many of you have heard of pros? Raise hands. I just want to see. How many of you have flew an airplane in the last 6 months? Then you have used pros. It's that simple. I mean, 95% of international airlines use pro software. So when you go and try to book a ticket and the prices are a little high, you can blame pros. I mean, you know, they do play a role on it. But Rajat, Michelle, and Sham covered. When I look at the automation space, I think there's two aspects to it. One is the line of business, and the other is the IT. We talked about, you know, the RPA bots. We talked about decisions or rules engine workflow. That all kind of fits into the line of business side. With Alex, who runs the IT operations, IT director for pros, I want to talk about the IT automation. How do you observe your IT landscape? How do you really do resource management of your applications? And also, how do you bring AI to really drive your ops? So, Alex, why don't you start with, you know, telling the audience what pros does? I mean, I kind of give them a little color,
Sure,
but
yeah.
It will be good for them to hear.
Thank you, Dinesh. So as Dinesh said, if you bought a ticket recently, you probably use our software, right? So dynamic pricing, we are to blame. Pros is a software company started about 30 years ago, trying to resolve the problem with the overbooking, right? So we implement technology, AI, and science to price tickets, but we serve the B2B and B2C markets in general for pricing. So our message is that we are driving profitable growth for our customers in general, and that's using price optimization, configure price and quote solutions. So our software is used in the transportation business, medical, you know, software, people that are selling software, people that are selling components for computers. We are pretty much used in every industry. We started in the travel industry for the airlines, but now we are pretty much everywhere. One fun fact about pros is that we process more transactions in our systems than Visa, so in a yearly basis.
That's me looking at prices every 30 seconds, you know,
exactly.
to see prices changed.
Every time you're pricing, our software is doing some analytics or using some science to define that price based on demand, based on the overall market, based on the searches that are happening, based on the competition data. So we use a lot of data entry points to define pricing. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make every product the most profitable possible for our customers.
So, I mean, it's just to give some context from a pro's perspective, in this kind of business, SLAs matter, right? Yes. I mean, it's like 4 nines is what you're aiming for and that you need to drive. Yeah. And this is where, I mean, when pros and IBM started working together, one of the key focus areas for you was that as you journey to the cloud and manage a hybrid cloud environment, how do you keep those SLAs and manage those risks? And that's where we work together on the turbonomic aspect. And, you know, if you could share some light on how we went through that journey, and especially maintaining that 4.9 SLAs plus risk management that comes with it.
Yeah, definitely. As Nesh said, I'm on the product engineering and operations side of the house. So Pros initially was on-prem type of software. So our customers acquired the software, they had their own data centers, they installed our software, and we sold that software as a perpetual license type, and we added maintenance to it. Now, we moved to a subscription model, and as part of the moving to the subscription model, we moved customers from our on-prem type of install to cloud solutions. So when we did that on a public cloud, the main focus of our engineering operations team was to make sure that our software was running, right? So as Nesh said, I mean, the 4 nines, make sure availability is there. So if you go to a website, you expect the price to show up when you click to price that ticket, right? You don't want to wait. So, and as part of that, our teams were engaged on making sure they made that transition of the software. So the architecture of the software is changing. We're going to a multi-tenant type of approach on how we deploy the software. Things are changing in general, so there's a main focus on that. And as the developers and engineers, there's a risk avoidance mentality all the time, right? So what we're trying to do is make sure that the system continues to run, and that happens with over-provision sometimes. So you're gonna provision bigger things just to make sure that you can meet those SLAs, the 4 nines. So as part of that process, right, we are a software company. We also developed some internal solutions to try to optimize that. And the main focus for us is not that. So we partner with Turbo, the Turbonomic and IBM team, to see how can we better optimize our deployment. One of the first things that we took advantage of was reservations. It's an easy thing to do when you're using the public cloud, is to take advantage of the discounts of reservations and increase your reservation coverage. So to give you numbers, 40% of our deployment used to be reserved. We had a 97% utilization of the reserved instances before Turbonomic. We moved that number to 85% coverage, and we maintain a 99% utilization of that now. So that's part of what we did. And the other things that we're trying to do is optimize and right-size our deployment. Again, because of the SLAs, there is definitely a concern from our development teams in the beginning to say, are we sure that this recommendation is a good recommendation? Can we really right-size this environment or make this environment smaller without impacting our SLAs? So that's where we drove a lot of the discussions with our teams, validating the data that we receive, validating the recommendations that we have to resize things and make sure that we could maintain the SLAs that we had committed to our customers, and also reducing risk. So we learned a lot of lessons through that process, right? We had a good engagement with the teams, making sure that we were also able to talk about what worked and what did not work for a SaaS provider like us, and made improvements to the product as we went through that journey together.
I think Alex makes a really good point, which is, what is the biggest challenge when you go from a CapEx to an OpEx? It's the cost, the cloud cost. Because me as a developer, which I used to be, what is the first thing I do? I over-provision. I don't want my critical applications to ever fail. So the best thing to do is over-provision the resources. And that's what Alex is talking about, is that how can a application resource management system can come in and help you with that, so you are not over-provisioning and paying much more for the cost. When I was with a major retail chain CIO, and this is exactly the problem that she mentioned, is that they are moving from a CapEx to OpEx, and the biggest challenge is that their developers are opening all kind of logging, monitoring, all those things, and the cost goes exponentially higher. So that's what Alex is talking about, is that how can we really drive a resource management system that is maintaining your resources at a level so that you can manage your cost, right?
Yeah, the challenge there, if you have a subscription in public cloud, right, it's really easy to turn on stuff, right? So if you don't have anything monitoring that or making sure that whatever you turn on is right size, there's definitely a risk. At the end of the day, you just see the bill come, right? It's not, if there's not something that's maintaining visibility into your deployment to make sure that you are optimized, you have that visibility when the bill comes at the end of the month, right? So what was special for us in regards to Turbo is that we were able to get that additional visibility and take action and use the automation that Turbo provides to take action in our deployment to make sure that we optimize. And one thing that I want to bring up is that there's definitely a risk avoidance perspective of this, and it's a process, right, where we have to implement specific milestones to be able to get the engagement from internal teams. Because at first they say, well, you're just telling us to reduce this size, and there's risk, right? We still want to maintain those SLAs that we talk about. And so we drove that process in a way that we first changed development environments and then test environments and then eventually production environments, but incorporating automation to make sure that that was done in a way that didn't require someone to go and review those numbers. That's pretty much being driven. You're just reviewing the results and making sure you're monitoring what the system's doing on a day-to-day basis.
And I would also say this, I mean, you heard from Rajat and Sham that there's about the RPA and the tooling that exists in the line of business side. But there's huge opportunity on the IT side to go really automate, especially when you come into the hybrid cloud of things. I mean, how do you make sure you observe your complete infrastructure? How do you use AI for log detection or anomaly detection? How do you use the topology viewer? How do you make sure that there's event correlation? Huge opportunity on the whole IT side, and that's what I think IBM Turbonomic and what we have done with Pros is really focus on the IT automation side, really focus on IT resource management side, because I think that's a space that has been touched much. A lot of focus on the line of business side, because that's where a lot of the automation tool comes in, whether it's RPA, whether it's process mining, whether it's workflow, all those things comes in on the line of business side. But what we really focused on IT side, and Pros has been a wonderful partner for IBM in really driving the IT automation journey. So thank you, Alex. Really appreciate. And he flew 19 hours from New York and Houston to come and tell the story. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate being here, and we're happy to have this partnership with IBM. So
thank you.
It's good.
We've been discussing AI and automation from the business continuity and optimization angle. Our next panel will look at the customer experience. We know that companies that excel in providing excellent and accurate, timely care to customers gain a real competitive advantage. Our panelists will discuss how AI is enabling an optimal experience for their customers. I would like to bring up and have you meet Gautam Aggarwal, Regional Chief Technology Officer at Mastercard, Kevin Lam, Head of Tomorrow Digital Group and Group Digital Banking at UOB, and Dennis Wong, Vice President, Enterprise 5G and Platforms at Singtel, the one who's keeping us connected. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. So Gautam, automation has fundamentally changed Mastercard's business in the last 50 years, and I know that pace of change is getting ever more faster. Where is it headed in the next 5?
So I think what has happened is, we started as a payments company, right? So we started with some basic automation in payments where fraud detection was the big piece that we're looking at. Is this fraudulent transaction or not? I think where we're headed next is payments is just one piece of the value chain. So we want to take it to more data-enabled analytics and also figuring out fraud. And more importantly, how do we upsell, cross-sell for the merchants, right? What the next purchasing pattern for the user would be. So I think that's where we're taking automation next to.
Kevin, you have the word tomorrow in your title. That must say something about your role and the future of banking at your company.
Yes, UB Tomorrow is about building a regional digital banking across Southeast Asia. So UB, we've been at this for at least the last 5 years in earnest. And we are building up all these digital platforms across all of Southeast Asia. And we hope to be able to build one common platform to be able to serve our customers across this region.
So Gautam and Kevin are from the banking world, financial services. Dennis, you come from a company that is pure tech and telecom. So can you discuss your experience in managing this technological evolution? We know that the pace of change is going ever faster, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that probably a lot of people think that Singtel, so it's Singapore Telecom, so it's all about technology and telecoms. But I think through these years, actually, we have evolved quite a fair bit. If you look at what happens to NCS, look at the companies that they have acquired and the strength that we have actually built up, we are more than just a telco. We are looking at more from services perspective. We are looking more from data analytics and AI perspective, and even security. So if I look at things from perspective of how the changes is going to come, we believe that for us, working is really not just about providing connectivities to the customer. It's about going through the digital journey with the customer. That's where I think we are heading. And then for each of the customer, I think if you look at it, not a single industry. We don't just sell connectivity, same connectivity to all industries. Now we are partnering the industry or different verticals in their own specific custom way. So I think that's the kind of change that's going to come.
And we're going to discuss the challenges of rolling out 5G very soon. But first, I want to ask Gautam. I was intrigued by your bio because you went from a global strategy role to a pure tech role at Mastercard, which means that you yourself had to scale up and chase the current technologies, something that many of us in this room fear. How did you do that?
So listen, I think technology used to be an enabler of strategies, right, in the past. It was one of many things that companies did. In the new world order, I think technology has become the key differentiator, right? It is what sets you apart from companies that are successful versus not. And I think everybody wants to be a technology company, right? Whether it's taxi service provider, whether it's a food delivery provider, they don't call themselves, they call that as a category, right? But they call themselves a technology company. So given that, I think 4 or 5 years ago when I was still at Mastercard, I realized that if you want to remain relevant, you want to become successful as a future leader of large organizations such as mine, you need to have a deep understanding of technology, right? So for me, that was the conscious decision. Now, was it difficult or not? It was actually fairly straightforward. I am a trained engineer. I have an undergraduate degree and master's degree in computer science. Worked as an engineer for 6 years, 12 years ago. Built my own PC when I was 14. So I think that transition was not difficult. However, what was interesting was things have evolved, right? We have new languages, we have new concepts. So picking that up took some time, but I think it's there. For me, this is just part of my journey, right? I think right now in technology, I foresee myself going back to business in the near future and then probably come back to technology because I do feel the future leaders will have to go a little bit back and forth and have to have a much broader understanding of different functions.
So a follow-up to that question, obviously if you built your own computer at the age of 14, you probably didn't need a lot of outside support, but did Mastercard provide a lot of internal education? How did you learn what you needed to learn?
Yes. So I think in this day and age, quite frankly, not just companies like Mastercard, which has a lot of online learning and also support that you can use. There's a lot of things you can use, right? Khan Academy and others, right? So I did leverage both internal and external tools, right? With this whole COVID wave, we learned about all this online education. So I did self-educate myself. In fact, I am enrolled in a program right now to learn more about Python, which is a language I've never really worked on before. So yeah, I'm using a lot of tools, both internal and external.
Kevin, in financial services, a big challenge is providing good customer services to people in a variety of locations who have different expectations and demands. So how do you manage so many different environments, both on the regulatory side and also for customer expectations?
We have to do it very patiently. There is a lot of diversity. So hiring a diverse team helps. At UOB tomorrow, we have a team of people from more than people that come from those markets, as well as people who come from other parts of the world, right? To navigate the diversity of Southeast Asia. So myself, I was in Indonesia and then before that in Malaysia for a total of about 10 years before coming back to Singapore. And hence, having a good grasp of the regulatory environment across the region, I think that's very important because Southeast Asia may look like a very exciting place, 300, 500 million people, depending on how you look at your segments. But it's really a very diverse place. Different languages, different regulations, and different mindsets, different culture. So I would say that you need a lot of patience if you want to build something across Southeast Asia, whether it's in technology or it's in any other business. But a diverse team really helps.
We have a great question that just came in from our audience, and I think this is a great question for you being in telecom. How do you measure the success of improved client experience?
How do I? Okay. I think one of the things that, probably I'll take a little bit of an analogy. I think, for our customers' success, I think you look at it is that, like I mentioned earlier, it's a digital journey we go with them. So I think one of the things we look at it is that how do we able to transform their business? For one of the things that I have mentioned earlier, that, for 4G to 5G, I'll probably use that as an example. People think that 5G is the next generation of 4G. So I always tell my customer, if you think that 4G and 5G, the difference is 5G is just an incremental difference between the performance, and you just think that, productivity went up a little bit, performance went up a little bit, I think we are missing the mark. The reason is because I think that for 5G, it brings about much more things. It brings about much more capability. And for my customers itself, I mentioned, we will discuss with the customer, where do you aim to see yourself deploying AIs, deploying automation, deploying security? How do you want to do that? And with that, I think we have set a milestone and said, look, what we can do for you as an enabler is to provide the fundamental pieces for you. I'll just give a very simple example. When everyone wants to apply an application, you need to have the cloud. You need to have the connectivity. And if you want the AI, you want it to be at the edge, you have another edge console to manage. Then on top of that, putting all these pieces together, you say, I want end-to-end security. So you realize that the customer actually got a lot of things to manage. So that's the reason why we emphasize on this thing called the digital journey. We want the kind of customer that you come to us, we will be able to have a platform that you, from a single platform, able to manage this across. I think earlier speaker, before this panel was talking about SLA. And just imagine if I can put your connectivity, your cloud, and your edge, and your security SLA together. I think that is what the customer needs now. The customer doesn't want to have too much things to really manage. Why? Because their end customer, which is consumer, usually, are changing. The behaviors are changing. People are looking at hyper-customization. We're just speaking to customers who say that I want my shoes, my Nike shoes, if you ever know Nike by you, I want it to be this color, this sole, this kind of shoelace, and this kind of design. These are the things that's happening. And customer want things real time. So I think that's where I believe things are changing. For the customer experience, be it the end customer, be it the enterprise, we are talking about hyper-customization. We are talking about real time. And for me, I will measure myself the success if I can provide this capability to my customer that they can look at this thing as a whole. So probably that's my
Yeah, it's not just to make the customers happy, because your customers are learning, if they have not known already, that your services are critical to their just doing business.
That's right.
So are they coming to you already knowing this, or do you actually have to say to them, you need more things that you don't yet know?
Yeah. So probably I think I will say that it comes both ways. All right. Some of our customers are very sophisticated. I think probably from Singtel itself, we announced a partnership with a Hyundai recently, and to them, they are building a meta factories. So it's something that we probably will know what does a meta factory looks like, but they are able to share with us what's their vision. And for us, as a builder, we just put it up and make it happen for the customer.
I want to ask you about the investments that must be made in order to keep your technology current so that you can serve your customers and they, in your case, with Singtel, serve their customers. Gautam, let's go back to you. It is public that Mastercard is spending $1 billion on new technology. My question is, how do you spend $1 billion? So maybe I should just ask you that. How and where are you spending $1 billion?
Listen, we are in a region. So the $1 billion number is actually not the correct number. It's a number that I am directly involved in the region. So the number is much larger. But with a region with 4 billion people, it's very easy to spend the $1 billion. The challenge is not actually way to spend the money. It's way to not spend the money, right? How do you prioritize, right? Because there are things that you're leaving on the table, right? That you're leaving on the table. So for us, the areas at least that I'm involved in, I am spending a lot of time in China and Japan, as an example, where international payment networks are not allowed to process domestically, right? So we are doing that. In Southeast Asia, we're using actually automation and artificial intelligence to actually improve the fraud experience on payments transactions. And not just for Southeast Asia, it's across the globe, but there's a focus in Southeast Asia right now. Then we're spending time in Australia, right, with open banking, right? Open banking is still, I think, in a very nascent stage, if you will. So we're spending time on how do we expand into that space. The other place that we're spending a lot of money is in digital identity. So Singapore, for those of you who are from here, the Sync Pass, there's actually a little bit of an element of the Sync Pass that is part of Mastercard, which allows you to log into your Sync Pass application. We're bringing that same technology to Australia as well. And then, of course, we are expanding to new payment flows, right? So traditionally, we were a card network, right? And now we have expanded ourselves in this multi-rail strategy around real-time payments, ACH, and hopefully in the near future, CBDCs and coins. So I think for me, $1 billion is actually not a lot of money. It's very easy to spend. It's where do I not spend, and how do I prioritize things?
I'm going to ask you another question, which I will also ask Kevin as well. You mentioned something very interesting. Is it almost as important not just what you're spending, and as you said, it's more than $1 billion, but also what you can save?
Absolutely.
And that's where also automation comes in,
Absolutely.
especially with the fraud. Can you give us an idea of how much your company is able to save or recover?
Yeah, so one of the big things with fraud we say is back in the day when we didn't have what I call as automation AI, 6%, 7% fraud rate on a card transaction was pretty normal, right? And over the years, both with the systems learning and we are able to find more patterns, we have brought that number down to 3%, 2% in many markets. Now, not all markets are alike. In some markets where many of the banks are not really equipped or ready to adopt some of the newer technologies, the number still stays at that 5, 6%. But we have enough proof points now live where we've saved billions of dollars, right, for banks and customers, where we've brought that 6% down to 3% primarily through automation. So that's one area that we are spending, or rather we are saving money, if you will. The other area where I will say we are saving is, I think Sham made a point earlier, that how a payment transaction costs at $3 to process, right, for a check, right? And with real-time payments, it's sub $1, it's sub 1 cent, right? So that's the other area, right? So what we are educating our clients is they should not look at payment transaction as a cost of that immediate transaction, but how much you're saving in your regular business, right? So how much have you saved from your check processing? How much are you saving from your cash handling? All of that, right? Because if you look at that 1 cent or sub 1 cent, the conversation will always be on that cost, right? So we're talking about how do we look at the savings that banks are, getting out of that. So those are two areas I would say directly we're saving a lot of money on.
Kevin, as long as we're talking about financial services, money, saving money, we also have to bring up the real picture of competition, because there's an influx of digital banks right now in the region. So how are you standing out and differentiating your bank?
So we've been monitoring the digital banking development around the world. Right now, actually, it looks a bit challenging for a lot of the digital banks around the world. In Australia, I think there were 4 digital banks licenses given out earlier. 3 of them have returned the license. They have closed. Only 1 remains. In London, in UK, we noted that the gain in market share by all the digital banks together were a relatively small single-digit percentage, if we were to be generous. And the impact on savings, especially during the pandemic period, right? There was a flight back to quality, to where there were institutions that were considered as trust, bastions. So even we look around nearer home, right, in Hong Kong, right? There were 7, 8 digital banks there. The cost of operating is very high. We're talking about spending $1 billion is not difficult. The broadest category would be people, right? It's not so much hardware, software. Is actually what you spend on headcount on people. Because building software is all about your engineers. And if your engineers you don't have work arriving on their desk in real time, that's where there's a lot of waste, right? So for UOB, I think when we look at the cost category and look at how we protect and attack, right? It's both a defense strategy in our home markets, like in Singapore and to some extent in Malaysia. But in the markets outside, right, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, for example, those are areas whereby there are huge population dividends about to be reaped in the coming years. So we need to look at how we are able to acquire new customers. So acquisition of customers without the dependency on branches. That's something that's very big for us. We have big opportunity to do that. And also, I want to speak a bit about engagement. UOB tomorrow, we went out 5 years ago with a vision of wanting to be the world's most engaging digital bank. So that's something that we think will be a differentiator. We speak about data, how to use the connectivity to get real-time data. So right now, UOB, we are able to process more than 100 million transactions in real time, right, on a monthly basis. And the banks have a lot of data, but how do they clean those data and make that data usable? So right now, we have this capability in the back, right? We worked with an Icelandic company to be able to do that, and we use an Israeli company, or an AI company, that we combine these two software and serve out real-time insights to our customers. So these are just some of the examples how a bank like UOB, who's been around for more than 85 years, is looking to reinvent itself to be progressive.
Okay, I'm very interested in this because before, during my lifetime, you would be drawn into a bank with a toaster and a lollipop. Are customers really intrigued and coming to you because they want to see the data insights? You said you want to be more engaging.
They don't come to you, Janet. I think you have to go to them.
Yes.
Right. So there are different ways. The app itself is one. Going to the metrics of looking at how frequent, right, the activity of the customers on your app, I think is one of the key measures we're looking at, what we call the daily active usage. And at the same time, there are other mediums as well. So that's not the only place where customers come to. Partnerships in ecosystems, that's something that I think a lot of banks and digital banks are actively looking at. So not just UOB, I think many banks are now looking at how they can partner with people that own ecosystems, who own, whether it's an e-commerce platform, right, a ride-hailing platform, or any platform, telco platform. But of course, these platforms themselves know that what's valuable is actually the data. So therein lies, I think, that balance of power and how we find relationships and partnerships in the future.
Dennis, I asked the bankers about the investments they needed to do in order to maintain their customers. Can you tell us about the investments that Singtel is making?
Yeah, I think, from a Singtel perspective, we have a long heritage. We have been here in Singapore. And then, of course, I think we also have covered in the region. We have, companies in the region as well. But back to close to home, if you see that what happens when 5G was actually being, the spectrum was being auctioned. During the National Day, we actually announced that we have 95% coverage on the outdoor for the 5G coverage itself. That says about our commitment to our customers' experience itself. Because we believe that 5G, as I mentioned earlier, 5G is going to be a step change in the way we can communicate, work, and play. But that is mostly for the, probably, I think the biggest, what we call beneficiary will be actually the enterprise customers. So that is where we believe that is going to be, where the benefit of 5G is going to be apparent. So I think that's where we are working a lot with our customers on doing that. I think I go back to the same point that, eventually, ultimately, it's the end customer. Customers are demanding different things. So like what Kevin mentioned, data. Data is helping us to provide better experience to the customers. You can, I think Kevin probably knows that every time when the customer click a certain click, how many clicks they are needed. When the customer come on board to your e-commerce platform, the maximum click for them to complete the transaction is probably 2 or 3 clicks. That's the kind of thing that we kind of like want to do. If the customer is doing more than 5 clicks, like either is very confused or the customer doesn't like kind of like the UX that is not working. Similarly, for all of us, from a telco perspective, we are doing quite a fair bit to enable the enterprise to be able to do that, especially in real times. I think we all know. I think it was reported many years ago that Amazon says that as long as their page of their e-commerce platform loads 100 milliseconds faster, 100 milliseconds is probably the time we blink our eyes actually. They actually can improve the sales by a few, I think it's like a percentage point, which is huge. So I think you can see that all these things actually improve the customer's experience and actually has a very big impact on the whole economy of things. Yeah.
Can I follow up and ask you to draw the link for us? Why is 5G critical to automation? How does it enable it?
Yeah. Okay. If you look at it from a perspective, I think I don't want to go into too much technical, but if you look at things like the drones. You look at things like, for example, autonomous robots. You look at the things like the AR, VR goggles that people are using. I think one of the things that you realize that actually 5G provide not just the large bandwidth, it also provide the low latency. Latency in one very important aspect is that if any one of you who has experienced the AR, VR goggle, when you move your head, sometimes the screen doesn't move. So you realize that you feel a bit giddy. That is latency because that image couldn't move as fast as it should when you move your head, when your head motion is detected. That's latency. So that's one thing about 5G, providing that capability. Secondly, in terms of productivity, because of the high speed, especially in the factory, that things are being analyzed. Like for example, what we call flaw detection, or actually some correction. They're actually running such millions of kind of transaction per hour. So all this needs to be very quickly analyzed. And for 5G, they are able to do that in a very, very low speed because 5G brings about another technology that, I don't want to go into that, but what we call the edge compute, which means that the computation is nearer to the device. Decision made is faster. And for example, for a recommendation engine, let's say, for example, I'm on an e-commerce platform. I know that you're clicking these few things. I want to make sure that immediately before you get out of my site, I recommend something that's relevant to you. How can my AI engine make that very quick decision? So I think that's one of the kind of like benefit for 5G. The high bandwidth, you can do analysis up to 8K, but at the same time you have very low latency.
Janet, I have a quick question for Dennis.
Yeah.
Dennis, is 5G fast enough for the metaverse?
Yeah, it is.
I knew that M question was going to come up.
Because you talk about virtual reality goggles and everything, right? So that's one of the things that we have been looking at, talking about launching into the metaverse and everything. But metaverse sounds very metaphysical, but it's actually just another name for cyberspace, right? Yeah. Is 5G sufficient, or we have to look for 6G?
I think for the current testing that we have done, actually we're developing a 5G, what we call a metaverse ourselves. 5G is at this point of time good enough. Because I think if we are aware that in Singapore, while you're outside, you're probably looking at some certain spectrum. But in a factory or at home at a hotspot area, you will have more than enough spectrum. Yeah, you have more than a gig to up to a 2 gig of download speed. So, back to where we are, like about 25 years ago, I still remember as a young engineer, I climbed up the Horsburgh Lighthouse to repair a microwave link. Some of you know what's a microwave link. 25 years ago, the microwave link was 2 meg. Today, if I tell my daughter that I pass her a phone, if the speed is less than 50 meg, she'll be telling me, Papa, I don't want the phone. Can you please take it away? So I think that's how far we have come. And so while we look at it today, we are talking about speed, download speed about 1 gig, 2 gig is enough for metaverse. And I think metaverse is going to be something that's going to be game changing. And I think that everyone is going to be, part of the game. I think Straits Times have a big, kind of like, articles about the metaverse over the weekend. So I think it is coming. And I think that's where I think 5G and the MEC is going to come and play a big part in it.
So Kevin, let's turn the question back on you. As you digitize your customers and clearly offering the metaverse as another inducement, thinking about it, you have to tread that line of basically marrying the old to the new. An audience member wanted to know, what are some of the mistakes that have been made? What could you have changed in the current process? What are lessons you've learned for the future?
I think mistakes have been too many. We see in a different perspective right now that it's actually a test and learn. So it's a culture that I think a lot of banks and a lot of forward-looking companies are looking at right now, not to see an experimentation that did not succeed as a mistake, but rather to see it as something that we learned. And how fast can you fail? And how fast can you learn from that failure to pick up again? So if the thinking is, this is a mistake and then you're in big trouble, you will not be able to engender that kind of culture where people like to work for you. So I think UOB would picked up on that about 5-7 years ago. And our group CEO speaks about, trying, failing. And if it's failing, so as long as it's within a safe perimeter that we're trying, I said 1 to 2% of our annual revenues, I think it's okay. I think one of the biggest call-out, I'll call it a lesson, right, test and learn, is that we need to change our minds about the traditional ways of doing credit underwriting, right? Maybe that's something to share with everybody. In the past, banks have a lot of data that's backward-looking. So we look at what's the data in the back, and then we decide how we approve a loan or not approve a loan. But the lesson I think we need to take is we have to look at forward-looking data. So that's something that we're still trying. Janet, I think we don't have the answer yet. So anything we're still trying, we don't call it a full failure yet at this point in time.
Very smart. Nice way to manage that messaging. We are down to our last few minutes, and I want to ask some questions related to skepticism, both within your workforce, because it's hard to convince people en masse to adopt new technologies, and it's almost harder to convince customers because they are not in the same room with you immediately. So Gautam, I'm going to ask you this as well. You serve such a vast variety of customers and so many of them around the world. Similar question to Kevin. Are there things that you could have done better as you're constantly bringing customers to a new way of doing business? How do you bring them along the technology journey?
So I think the thing that we are doing is we're taking a bit of a consultative approach, right? In the past, we were looking at ourselves as a payments network serving just the payments aspect of a client, right? Typically issuers and acquirers for us back in the day, right? I think we have moved from that model to be a little bit more of a consultative approach, right? So what we are saying is we're looking at the entire journey, whether it's, now today our clients are not just banks, right? They are fintechs as well, right? So we're looking at the journeys and the problem statements that they have, right, with their customer journeys and saying, how do we, instead of taking a payment-centric approach, how do we take a full journey approach and understanding what are the needs that they're looking to solve for, right, and be part of that, right? It doesn't have to be payments, right? So as I said earlier, because we have, Mastercard in the last, I would say about 10 years now, has acquired a lot of companies that are in the data analytics and AI space, right, and biometrics, right? So in many of the customer clients that we have today, right, we are not even providing any payment service to them, right? As the example that I used, SingPass earlier, right? We are actually playing a role in identity there. So I think what we have done is we've graduated ourselves to taking a little bit more of a consultative approach, right? We're encroaching the space of the McKinseys and the likes, if you will, in that sense. But I think that approach has helped us, right? Where the banks are seeing this as thought leaders and partners, in their problems, right? And again, not just banks, even fintechs, right? So I think that's what we have done. Promoting the use of technology is the way we see, best.
Really quick question to fold into your answer, please, because you were talking about the how you make money with the payments. The payments are increasing multifold while there is this race to zero as far as the cost that the banks can charge. So is this also just a glaring sign that automation has to be used because the margins are ever smaller?
Well, absolutely. I think cost is going down, right? I think what we are saying is because the number of transactions have gone up so high, right? The incremental cost is very low, right? For us, what's important is how are banks seeing this, right? And as I said earlier, right? If we look at it from a cost perspective, from a cost on the payment transaction perspective only, I think we're looking at the wrong way, right? We have to look at it in a holistic way. We're looking at how are we serving the broader banking needs and how are we solving for your cost challenges in the other areas, right? That's the way we're looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, I want to give you the opportunity to answer this same issue as far as, again, having to be very efficient within the bank and pleasing your customers at the same time.
We need to bring our customers along together with us. So financial education, media, talking to people like you, Janet, and being in even more mainstream media, a lot of financial inclusion for financial digital literacy is needed. So, yep, that's what we need to continue to do, to educate our customers.
We've almost run out of time, but I want to ask you the same question with cost. An audience member points out that 5G cost is still very, very high. When is it going to become more affordable in Singapore?
Okay, I think I'm not.
Your customers out here, and they're going to talk to you about this over coffee as well.
It's always it's always a matter of scale. So I think like what Gautam said, it's a matter of scale. I think it's a deployment and it's always scale. And actually what happens is that if you look at it in the past, we also have new technology that come out that is 2 to 3 times more expensive than a certain technology, but we embrace it. For example, CD-ROM, when it first came out, I'm in the time of CD-ROMs and cassette, some of you do remember the Walkman GW series kind of thing. So remember when CD-ROM first came out, remember a cassette was about $5 each. Then CD-ROM was a CD was about $25. It was 5 times more. But today, if you look at it, it became the mainstream. So the reason is very simple. It's because the performance, the capability, and the business impact that it will bring to you is different. Mm-hmm. So I would like to look at it from that perspective. It will be a game changer. It will be more expensive. Yes, probably. Time will tell when the cost will come down. I believe that when everyone experienced 3G and when go to 4G, probably, if let's say we say about 10 years back, I think Janet probably asked me the same question. 3G is here, 4G is going to be more expensive. Why do people want to use 4G?
And you already had someone ask about 6G, so.
Yes, correct. So I think that's the perspective, right? I think it's about perspective. It's about how much value it will bring to you. We talk about cloud. Cloud initially, when it started off, it was expensive. The OpEx model was expensive. But today, you look at it, people are adopting cloud. If we talk about mobile phones and mobile connectivity, it was expensive then. But look at it today. 60% of the world data is actually generated by the mobile device. So you can see that it is really about a choice of convenience and the choice of the benefit it brings to you.
Gautam, Kevin, Dennis, we have run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. That went very fast, so please feel free to ask these gentlemen questions personally over coffee. You can hear firsthand the cost of 6G, if that is on your mind. Thank you so much for joining us for this briefing on intelligent automation, creating the workforce of the future, and also how to enhance the customer experience. We hope you enjoyed these conversations. We want to thank all the speakers and the moderators for a wonderful program, and thank you to our sponsor, IBM. Oh, James is here. Okay, I don't know if you noticed, but we had a delay for one of our speakers, and I was really excited. So, James, come on up. We're going to squeeze this in. This is, thank you so much to see you. All right, well, I am actually very excited about this. As you could see, the rain, traffic, everything has been a little bit challenging for us today. But James, I am so excited that you are here. For those of you who do not know, James Tan is the director of the Smart District Division of JTC. He is working to create Singapore's first district where cutting-edge technology and sustainability will be built in the same place where people both live and work. So tell us more about this.
Yeah, first of all, let me apologize for holding up everybody. But for the question that Janet asked, in terms of building a smart district, JTC has got this role of building estate that are economically competitive for Singapore, and we want to attract the best talent as well as the best technology companies to come to our estate and set up business. But in order for us to do this, we need to make sure that there are things that we do that can really attract these people to come up to our estate and set up a business, and for people to come and want to work and live in our ecosystem and so on.
People already view Singapore, myself especially, as one of the smartest cities already out there. So what are some of the specific things that will be offered in this district?
So in many smart cities, you can just buy smart systems and just dump them there, right? Smart car parks, and you have smart lifts, intelligent toilets, and so on. But for us, the way we view smart city is co-creation. We wanted more people, whether it's you're a visitor, whether you're a citizen, whether you're a worker, whether you're a company, to co-create smart solutions with us. And that requires a digital layer that actually abstract all the estate services, where you can then develop smart businesses. Say, for example, if you are a last mile logistic company, you want to use robotics to optimize your business and then to send goods and services to the district. How can you interface your robots with our systems? Whether it's a door system, whether it's a lift system, or even a car park system, you need to have that open APIs, for example, to connect to us. And what we want to do is that in our estate, all this connectivity are freely available if you are coming into our estate to do business. And it's also the case where if you are a citizen and you're trying to build an application that's convenient for, say, for example, the visually impaired, you can build a visitor management app that caters for them and that can interface with our buildings.
So if I live there, I'm going to be interacting more with robots, and how will that improve my life?
Well, okay, robots are probably just a business. It actually brings about convenience. For example, a lot of it is in the retail business. If you have a shop in PDD, Punggol Digital District, or if you are a business from outside, you want to use robots to deliver goods to your offices, the convenience is where you don't have to go down to the lower deck of the office, and the robots actually come to the door. So that's like just one use case for convenience. But of course, there'll be robots doing cleanings and all that, and they're not supposed to disturb you. They're just supposed to avoid you and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think robots is just one use cases. The convenience is beyond. The delivery of the service will be more from either mobile apps or anticipating your presence. For example, we're going to use a lot of AI to control the climate. In Singapore it's going to be very hot, right? So we use AI based on the weather information from outside, based on the building thermostat, based on the number of people in the room, and we try to achieve comfort at the same time, hit the sustainability target that we want. So a lot of it is in the form of convenience. You might not know it, but it's working at the back.
You didn't quite manage to delay the rainstorm this morning, but I'm sure you are working on that. You say a lot of this is based on digital twin technology. How does that work? And does every individual have a digital twin?
No. I think in terms of when we talk about digital twin in the estate, it is about the building and estate. Because for us, as a real estate owner, in order for us to administer the estate, either if you take a helicopter up to 5,000 feet, and then you have X-ray eyes and see through, and then you can see every single system that's functioning. But that's not quite possible. The only way that we do it is through a virtual environment, and that's where the digital twin comes in. Every single system is connected to that virtual environment. It's almost like metaverse minus the people inside. That means every single system that runs inside the district is modeled within the 3D environment. What's the benefit of this? The benefit is that the estate manager now has a very good overview of everything that's moving, from the leaves, from the doors. If the door is not closed, why is it not closed? Can we do a remote control to shut it? If the leaves is malfunctioning, we can actually know where it stopped, and then did the door closed. So all these are the power of digital twin. If you know about the technology, people like Rolls-Royce and all this, they use this to simulate the engine capabilities and do predictive and preventive maintenance. And in the event of a system that moves, in the digital twin, you actually can count the number of times it moves. You don't really need a sensor to do that. You can actually just do in the virtual environment and count the number of times and calculate the mean time before failure and do a predictive and preventive maintenance on it. So the power of the digital comes from there. Whether we have a digital twin of individual, I don't think we want to go there. I think there's a lot of data privacy concern and all this. But we do want to know, like, roughly at this point of time, how many people enters the estate and leave the estate. Yeah.
How many people will be there?
So in Punggol Digital District, we aim to create 28,000 jobs. That will be workers. There's a Singapore Institute of Technology, a university just next door. There's another about 11 to 12,000 students. But of course, within the precinct, the Punggol Smart Town, there's another about 50 to 60,000 residents. Yeah.
Can you give us the timeline on this? Where are you now in the project, and when will this be fully online?
If you read the papers, we promised to do this, to get the estate ready in 2023, but unfortunately due to COVID, the workers just recently came back in full force, so this will be delayed to 2024. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I ask you, is this being done in other parts of the world? We hear about the city that they were trying to build in Saudi Arabia, and Qatar is trying to do regions that are planned and highly tech. So where else is this being done?
I think everybody is working on smart city, which is why Singapore must do this. If not, we'll be left behind. I can't count how many cities are doing this. I think it's anybody who has a will to compete in or to be part of the ecosystem, the global ecosystem will work on smart city. Yeah.
Do you feel Singapore is ahead in this effort and this race, or where does Singapore stand?
I hope to tell you that we are ahead, but just not too long ago, our Prime Minister is saying that the smart nation is not exactly moving that fast for him.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I don't think we want to brag about this. We might be ahead of some people and we might be behind someone. Yeah, but I don't know where we are.
Well, I'm obsessed with the cleaning robot now, so please keep developing. Let's talk about the underlying technologies that are necessary for this kind of smart district. Obviously, the cloud, AI, robotics. You talked about a different kind of metaverse, one with the people in or not in it. So how do you merge all of these technologies to create this?
Right. A lot of the fundamental building blocks like cloud and all this, I will not illustrate them. There is another layer that we built to achieve what I said just now. We're trying to build a middleware. For all these systems to talk to each other, traditionally you do a multi-to-multi integration. You have APIs, you have message bus, or connect to you and so on. But it's very difficult when you don't have a central message bus that connects everybody. So for example, if you connect a system, and then you connect to 5 other systems, the next systems that comes on board, you need to connect to all the 6 systems that is already on board. But if you have a data bus, a middleware at the middle, once you're connected, you will see all the system that's already inside. There is an index for you. If you're familiar with operating system, right from the days of DOS to Windows, there is that address, that index where you can find every system and access whether it's a system control or whether it's a sensor data, you can pull from there. So this layer is actually very critical, and the middleware. That's where JTC, and actually I'm also from GovTech. I'm also the director for sensors and IoT. That layer is actually a collaboration between JTC and GovTech, where we aim to bring all the systems together. We build protocol translators, just like your device drivers for mouse, keyboards, and monitors. We build these device drivers to connect to that middleware, so that when the systems get connected, they can talk to each other. The turnstiles can tell the lift how many people is coming now, send more lift cars. The cooling system can also draw information from the CCTV. We do video analytics, and also the meeting rooms occupancy sensors, and so on, right? The list goes on, whether EV chargers, the energy management, the demand and supply, we can manage that. And it all goes through that middleware. Yeah.
We are coming to our last few minutes, so if any of you have questions, please submit them and I will try to get to them. Right. But you were talking about energy costs, so I want to ask you, what are the primary goals here of this smart district? Is it sustainability? Is it cost saving? Is it enhancing the life experience of people inside? Right. Is it even longevity?
Okay, it's actually all of that. We don't want to sugarcoat that we are not aiming to cut costs. A lot of the capability is sustainability related. We want to bring down energy utilization. But a lot of it is also to bring convenience for people working and living in our estate, and to improve the economic competitiveness. We want people like yourself to come to Singapore and set up a business and be part of the ecosystem. And of course, in terms of longevity, we want this to be something that we can bring forth to other estates. We don't want this to stop in Punggol. We want this to go on to other estates, the newer ones as well, like Jurong Innovation District and so on.
So you're actually trying to attract foreign investment and foreign companies to move into this district. Right. How will you measure the success of this?
Okay, there are a lot of targets that we have to achieve. We have given ourselves very quantifiable energy, water targets. We want to save X%. The other part is, of course, we will interview our tenants, our lessees, so people who work in our district. We want to achieve very high satisfaction rate. On the other hand, I think a lot of it will be if the district is very vibrant, we have no problems getting tenants, the CEO is happy, he has 100% occupancy, I think that's where we will meet our target.
All right. Well, best of luck. We will be watching. James Tan, I'm so glad that you were able to make it.
Thank you.
And have our conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we've come to the end of the program. Thank you again to the moderators, to the speakers. Thank you to IBM for making this briefing possible. Thanks to all of you who braved the rain and joined us here. If you'd like more information about the sponsor, please visit the resources tab on the event website. Thank you so much for being an engaged audience. I really enjoyed reading the questions that everyone submitted online and in person here. Very, very interesting. To watch any part of this program, you can return to BloombergLive.com to view on demand. Please join us now for coffee, tea, and networking outside the ballroom. Thank you so much.